Last year in the city of Dallas, you made over 280,000 emergency runs. Of those, a little over 178,000 of those were medical calls. There were only about 898 actual working fires, or 0.5%. So you're probably thinking, do I really need another school on rapid intervention or how to call a Mayday? Well, luckily for all of us, Maydays don't happen that often, but when they do, either to us or someone else, are you going to be ready? My name is Bret Stidham, and I'm a Deputy Chief of Operations, and I'm currently assigned to 806B shift. During this presentation, I'm going to discuss a few different topics with you, such as things you can do to prevent a Mayday from occurring, situations when you should call a Mayday either as the firefighter involved or as the incident commander. We'll also talk about Dallas Fire Rescue's Mayday procedures and what you can do to help yourself if a Mayday occurs. We're also at the end going to take a look at our new tactical worksheet and our Mayday checklist. Before we get into our Mayday procedures, I want to give you some statistics on when Maydays generally occur. These statistics are from approximately 1,000 different Mayday events that have been studied and evaluated in depth across the United States. The first one is types of Maydays. The top 3 types of Maydays are: number 1, firefighters becoming lost. The second one is firefighters falling from the roof. And last is firefighters falling into a basement. It's not always the most senior or least senior firefighters that are getting themselves in trouble and issuing Maydays. 50% of those calling Maydays are between 32 and 40 years old with between 6 and 15 years of experience. Most Maydays occur between midnight and 3 a.m., and over half of them are occurring between midnight and 6 a.m. And 73% of our Maydays occur during the second half of 24-hour shifts. As you know, during the second half of 24-hour shifts is when you're most tired, fatigued, or asleep when the run comes in. But that's when we need to be on top of our game. Believe it or not, size-ups or a lack thereof play a huge role in Maydays. When a size-up is bad or there is no size-up given, you have a much higher chance of having a Mayday happen. A 360 is needed to complete your size-up. If for some reason you cannot complete a quick 360 on arrival, either send a company, a BC, or maybe even your command tech to the area building that you have not been able to get to. 50% of all Maydays had no 360. 23% had an incomplete 360, so basically 73% of all Maydays had no 360 or an incomplete 360. A full 360 is very important. Having a functional announced stationary command is also critical. In our new MOP 600, it says the IC will set up a stationary command post on all working structure fires. 67% of Maydays occur when command is mobile, walking, or running around the fireground. Why is that? Well, it's because Maydays are happening before the formal or fixed ICS is in place, so the captain or whoever is in command initially is operational at that time. This is a problem because if command is working, no one is supervising or watching over the whole incident and seeing problems before they happen. This reinforces the importance of having a fixed command post where someone can watch the incident, track resources, and monitor the radios. 54% of all Maydays occur to a member of the crew from the first arriving unit. First due crews get in trouble because conditions are normally worse for them than later arriving companies. First due crews start putting water on the fire, ventilating, etc., and conditions are generally unknown at that time. That is why early size-ups are very important. This is also when we have more tasks to do than we have people to handle them. So firefighters are having to prioritize jobs, and they often have to try to do too many tasks at once. Therefore, we end up overexerting ourselves or taking extreme risks. 78% of Maydays are with one of the first 2 companies that arrive on scene. And to add to that, most Maydays occur between 15 to 17 minutes into the incident or 5 to 7 minutes after the arrival of the first company. A firefighter is 62% more likely to have a Mayday on an overtime shift. That is because the overtime firefighter may be working with an unfamiliar crew, may be working in an unfamiliar area, or in a job or position that they normally don't work, or they may be just tired from lack of sleep. 67% of maydays are some kind of a fall event. This includes stair collapses, slips, trips, through the roof, through the floor, or off the roof. And get this, only 11% sounded the floor or roof before walking on it. This is extremely important, especially when you know the fire is below you. 40% of maydays occur during salvage and overhaul. Why is that? Well, this is because when we usually let our guard down at that point, the fire's out, there's nothing really going on, right? Nothing to worry about. Remember, this is when all structural members have been weakened by fire, so this is when we should be extra cautious. Poor or no communication can lead to maydays as well. 40% of those calling maydays were on the wrong channel, and on several occasions, firefighters were found to have their radios not even on. Always check your radio prior to entering the IDLH environment. It is very important that you know the buildings in your district. Know which buildings are vacant or abandoned. Many times, vacant buildings are under construction or have had fires in them before. 38% of maydays occur in these vacant or abandoned structures. Firefighters may enter the structure and fall straight through the floor due to accelerants that may have been used or because of the reconstruction that has taken place. Larger structures means more maydays. Remember, the number one reason for maydays, as I stated earlier, was due to firefighters becoming lost. More square footage creates more challenges for you. There are greater distances to reach the fire, more rooms to search, and also more twists and turns. As firefighters, we train to perform search and rescue, deploying hose lines, and ventilating structures. We generally don't spend a lot of time training on the one thing we hope to avoid. None of us ever want to become lost, disoriented, injured, or trapped while working at a structure fire. But we must focus and train on how to prevent these situations and how to get out of them if something unfortunate happens. Hopefully you never have to call a mayday, but if you do, it is probably the one fireground skill that you must perform correctly the first time. Calling a mayday needs to be practiced and needs to become repetitious. You should never be calling your first mayday at a real incident. Preventing a mayday must consciously occupy your thoughts during training and when responding to emergency calls. To be able to prevent a mayday, you must pay close attention to the following factors. Number one, you must maintain situational awareness. When you develop tunnel vision on the task at hand, the complexity of the event may affect you. Number two, in order to stay safe and not get into a mayday situation, you must stay on the hose line or closely oriented to it. You must closely monitor your air supply. Always stay with your partner, maintaining 2 in, 2 out. You must always monitor the radio for any changing conditions on the fire ground. You also need to become familiar with your district. When you're pre-planning, here's some things you might want to discuss. Talk about the different construction elements, any strategies that you might come up with in that particular building. Also talk about problems you might have during a response. Take a look at and discuss differences between lightweight and legacy type construction, especially the roofs. Discuss lightweight truss roof systems. Between 1997 and 2008, NIOSH reported that 25 firefighters died in lightweight truss roof collapses. 11 others had injuries during those fatalities and 20 other near misses during 2005 and 2006. Underwriters Laboratory tested lightweight I-joists exposed to fire, and those collapsed in only 6 minutes. NIOSH tested lightweight roof trusses, and they collapsed in only 8 minutes. That could be just enough time for you to arrive on scene and climb onto the roof. Think about it. What construction considerations need to be made concerning newly constructed buildings? Well, we all know that contents stored in a building add fuel to the fire and strongly influence the rate of fire spread. And we also know that newer buildings are more efficient, and these same buildings have synthetic furnishings. Both of these factors lead to faster fire growth. Most new construction buildings also have open floor plans that causes a chimney effect and faster fire growth. Older buildings are more compartmentalized and can slow fire growth. What about loads on top of buildings? Heavy loads on top of the buildings, such as billboards, tanks, and heating and AC units, add a lot of extra weight to the buildings. When buildings are under demolition by fire, these added weights lead to faster roof collapses. You must recognize the dangers of these types of buildings. Reading smoke can determine if it's a go or a no-go situation for crews trying to determine whether or not to make an interior attack. When should you start to notice the smoke conditions of a fire? Firefighters must be able to recognize the dangers associated with smoke conditions when en route, upon arrival, and during firefighting operations. How can knowing the different smoke conditions assist you? Missing signs indicative of flashover, smoke explosion, backdraft, or rapid fire development has proven deadly to firefighters in the past. So the ability to effectively read smoke is a skill that can help prevent a Mayday situation from occurring. When the call comes in, what are your first actions? Your first action should be to recall everything you know about the buildings on the street you're responding to. The better you know your district, the better your prediction's going to be. Any prior knowledge you have of the specific address you're going to will help you make good tactical decisions and how to search the building safely. Think about the furniture, the hallways, the types of locations of windows. What can windows tell you about a room? Knowing where a window is located can prevent a Mayday since it may be the only egress point you have. You can also use windows to help you determine the layout of rooms prior to entering the structure. Consider the following. A large bay window adjacent to a front door is most likely a living room. A small rectangular window with a sill that is higher than the other windows is probably a kitchen window. Small windows with frosted glass are most likely bathroom windows. These days they could be larger windows as well. Try to remember that layout and where you saw those windows when you enter the building. You must be able to keep yourself oriented once you enter the structure. Staying oriented is critical to being able to get out of the building if conditions deteriorate. These are the basics of room orientation. Know where you are, how you got there, and how you can get out. As you move through the building, try to create a mental map of each room by identifying each door and window and each piece of furniture and its location within the room, and then keep that in mind just in case something happens. A common technique that we use for leading a hose line into a fire is to have 3 firefighters positioned close to the nozzle. So what are the best positions for firefighters to be when on a hose line, and how many firefighters should be on that line? Well, let's answer the first question first. We all know that according to Texas state law and NFPA 1500, we have to have 2 in, 2 out. That's pretty easy. However, 2 or even 3 people on the line does not always provide the most safety. The general rule is the further the line must be extended, the more people are required. Additional firefighters are needed to guide the line around obstacles and to keep the hose line from getting tangled up. As you advance the hose line deeper into the structure, more crew members should be added and positioned along the full length of the line. These members should be strategically placed at corners and stairwells and at doorways also. This will make advancing the line easier and easier to back out in case of an emergency. Who's the most important member on the fire line and why? Well, the last firefighter on the line is probably the most important member of your team. That firefighter is responsible for maintaining viable egress and monitoring conditions inside from a safe vantage point. That firefighter's sole responsibility is the safety of the personnel on the line. When we're taking the line out, we need to think about the guy at the nozzle. If everyone starts pulling the line back to the egress point, the firefighter at the nozzle will risk losing control of the nozzle. That firefighter should just keep the nozzle, and in case conditions warrant, they may want to either use the nozzle or turn and follow the other members down the hose line. As you know, air management training is a required component of SCBA training. So what are some of the key components of air management training, and where and when would this training be applied? Air management includes knowing and using breathing techniques that will help you conserve air during an emergency. Air usage varies from firefighter to firefighter, and it's up to you to know how quickly you use a bottle of air and to monitor your own air status while working. You can figure this out during training time by being on air and doing strenuous activities that simulate the workload of advancing a line or cutting a hole. More importantly, air management training is a Mayday prevention activity. If you're well trained in the art of air management, you will have increased situational awareness, increased orientation, improved tactical level thinking, and you're going to provide yourself a margin of error should a Mayday occur. There are 3 critical actions that can help you prevent a Mayday. Know what you have by always checking out your SCBA in the morning, and then also quickly check it again before you head into the IDLH atmosphere. Manage your air as you go by checking your air while you're operating, when you change levels in a building, and again when you're completing assigned tasks. And lastly, come out before your low air alarm activates. Don't wait until it happens. Think of it like this: 75% of your air is for your officer and the citizens you serve, and 25% of your air is yours. Which members are involved with tactical air management? And what are the duties concerning tactical air management, and why is it important? Management of your SCBA air supply goes beyond you monitoring your personal air supply. Your company officer and the incident commander are also responsible for tactical management of air supply. The company officer must maintain an ongoing awareness of their team's air consumption by periodically checking with their crew members. This allows the officer to constantly be aware of everyone's remaining air and adjust their activity and exit plan. The IC must also be aware of who's in the building and how long they've been in there. Getting consistent and timely progress in air status reports will help command have an early awareness of crews overextending their air supply, and the IC will be able to safely withdraw them if they have this information. 2 things must happen once a Mayday situation presents itself. Number 1, you must recognize it, and you must call for help immediately. If you delay the Mayday call, it could spell disaster. I want to give you some specific fireground situations to memorize so you will know when to call a Mayday if necessary. The first one is a lost or missing member. Any member on an incident who cannot be reached in person or by radio must be assumed lost, and a Mayday must be called. An SCBA malfunction or large loss of air. If during an incident your SCBA malfunctions or you experience a large loss of air and you cannot immediately exit, you must call a Mayday. A member is seriously injured or incapacitated. If a firefighter experiences chest pain and/or shortness of breath or is incapacitated by illness or injury while fighting a fire and they are unable to exit safely, a Mayday must be called. A member is entrapped or entangled. If you or another firefighter become entangled in wire or cords, or you become trapped by falling debris, a Mayday must be called. Any life-threatening condition that cannot be resolved in 30 seconds. We all know that minor problems, if not corrected, can escalate quickly. A Mayday must be called if you're in imminent danger due to any situation that cannot be resolved in 30 seconds. The last and most important one is, if you see something, say something. We all must change our culture of not wanting to make the Mayday call. As soon as a situation presents itself, call the Mayday so the rescue can happen more quickly. As an incident commander, when should you call a Mayday on a missing firefighter or company? We can use the 3 strikes and you're out rule by Deputy Chief Billy Goldfeder of the Loveland Symes, Ohio Fire Department. It basically goes like this. Command to Engine 1. You don't hear anything. You get no answer. That would be strike 1. Command to all units, emergency traffic. Command to Engine 1, Lieutenant Smith. Wait another 10 to 15 seconds. If there's still no answer, that would be strike 2. Command all companies on the fire ground. Advise if you see Engine 1's crew. If you don't get anything back, you don't hear anything pretty quickly, that would be strike 3. Your next transmission needs to be Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. Don't waste time. Follow the process and use your Mayday checklist. Generally, when you can't locate a firefighter or a company, your first response is, well, they have to be here somewhere. You usually aren't thinking Mayday. The big thing here is to follow the process and call the Mayday. In the last couple of segments, I gave you some Mayday percentages and specific situations when Mayday should be called. In this segment, we're going to discuss our DFR procedures for calling a Mayday and what you can do to help yourself if you call a Mayday. We're also going to take a look at our new Mayday checklist, which is on the back side of our DFR tactical worksheet. Let's first discuss the responsibilities that all Dallas Fire Rescue officers and firefighters have prior to answering the call. In every situation, a risk-benefit analysis should be conducted, and the incident commander will assume risk of firefighter health and safety in the IDLH atmosphere prior to conducting interior operations. All Dallas Fire Rescue officers must make sure that those under their command are adequately trained and fully understand and comply with our rescue of lost or trapped firefighters' MayDay procedures. All fire department members need to operate in a safe manner to minimize the need for ever calling a MayDay. Knowing when to call a MayDay is the most important thing. Here are a couple of reasons why firefighters don't call MayDays. Number one, their training and experience will always get them out. That's always been the situation in the past. This time it may be different, so you need to call a MayDay. Another reason is that firefighters may be embarrassed that they got in trouble in the first place on the fire ground and had to call for help. Let me put it to you this way. If you're thinking MayDay, transmit the MayDay. Your life may depend on it. As soon as the situation is realized, a MayDay must be declared. Immediately repeat on the portable radio, "MayDay, MayDay, MayDay." Announce your situation while still attempting to find your way out. Once a MayDay has been declared, command will notify fire dispatch of the MayDay and request an additional alarm. The incident commander should immediately attempt to contact the firefighter reporting the MayDay and confirm and gather as much information as possible. A couple of things are we need to make sure we check their air status and also have them activate their pass device. If deemed necessary, fireground operations can be moved to a different channel. As you can see on our MayDay checklist, we have boxes for completing actions, for also writing down the MayDay channel if we decide to change the channel. We've got a space for our tactical channel and also the time of the MayDay. So things we just talked about were confirming the MayDay, we need to check that off. Also ordering the next level alarm, we'll check that off. And then write down the air status of the member on here as well, and have the member activate their pass device, and you can check that off. If we decide to move fireground operations to a different channel, we can also check that off and write down what that channel is. As you can see at the bottom, we also have an announcement for ordering the next level of alarm. The next information we need to capture is our lunar acronym. This is supposed to be given by the lost or trapped firefighter, but they may need some help from command on completing all this information. So L is going to be your location. Give a description of that location. U is your unit ID, such as Engine 11's crew. N, the name or names of the firefighters that are lost or trapped. A is assignment, or the area, division, or group where you were working or the task you were given. And R is resources, whatever is going to be needed to get you out. This is all very important information. And you can see on our MayDay checklist, we've got an expanded area for all those things, so you can write all that down. You can also use your notes section as well. Once a MayDay has been declared, command will change the plan of action to a high priority firefighter rescue effort. But remember, the firefighting efforts must continue also. The IC will then assign and activate a rapid intervention team, and more than one RIT may be activated if conditions warrant. So if necessary, we may call for, if USAR 19 is on scene, we may call for USAR 33 as well, especially if it's going to be a long extended operation. Once the RIT has been activated, command must assign another RIT for standby just in case something else happens while we continue to fight the fire. Now you can see we'll check that off on our MayDay checklist as well, deploy RIT and replace RIT. Once a MayDay has been declared, command will assign a chief officer available to be in charge of RIT group. This group leader will be in charge of coordinating the rescue effort. If Battalion 3, 6, or 7 is on scene, they should be assigned as RIT group due to their task force leader training. The IC should also assign an additional chief officer as a rescue operations safety officer to monitor and evaluate safety of the operation. A PAR should then be conducted starting with those assigned to the most hazardous areas first. You can see here on our MayDay checklist, we've got spaces for assigning a rescue group supervisor, assigning a safety officer to a rescue, conducting a PAR, and also making the fireground announcement, which there is an example of that at the bottom of the checklist. The big thing I want to show you here is where it says assign a rescue group supervisor. We're going to be changing that to RIT group supervisor, and the basic reason for that is we've had some incidents in the past where we've had a rescue group for rescues of citizens, so it would be tough to have two different rescue groups. So we're going to change the actual firefighter rescue to RIT group supervisor. We're going to be changing that on our checklist and changing it to put that on the IDS with those changes. Here are a couple other key points to remember. You should only use the term Mayday when you're lost, trapped, or in trouble. If you have any other type of emergency, use the term emergency traffic and then let command know what your emergency is. If anyone declares a Mayday, all other radio traffic shall cease on the Mayday channel until the Mayday operation is complete. This means that unless you have extremely important information to pass along, you should talk to your division or group supervisor face to face. Command may choose to assign another channel for fireground operations. We all know this is an extremely difficult undertaking, but it can be done if necessary. All officers must control freelancing. Everyone on the fireground is going to want to be involved in the rescue, but remember, something happens such as a roof collapse or floor collapse that caused the firefighter to issue the Mayday, so if we're all rushing to the area to try to help, it could prove detrimental for you or the Mayday firefighter. This type of freelancing may lead to more Maydays being issued. Also, you have to continue to fight the fire, obviously, so doing so only helps the rescue efforts. Some key points. Personal accountability reports should occur anytime there is a critical change in an incident, such as a collapse or explosion, following a change from interior to exterior operations, or following an emergency evacuation tone. We always want to begin our PARs with the most hazardous areas first, and then work outward until all personnel are accounted for. When you're conducting a PAR and there's no response from a company, a Mayday will be declared. Clearing the Mayday. After the firefighter has been located and removed from the hazard zone, the IC will clear the Mayday by notifying all fireground personnel and fire dispatch. We will do this after a PAR has been called for and completed. Command will also notify everyone that normal radio traffic and all other fireground operations can resume. What can you do to help yourself? First of all, fires have taken the lives of firefighters in all parts of North America, and each fire is different, and sometimes operations go poorly. Unforeseen situations often threaten firefighters' lives, and firefighters must be ready for them. Once you have decided to call for a Mayday and given the lunar information to command, it's time to help yourself. The first thing you can do is activate your pass device and turn on your flashlight. The reason for this is that RIT teams are trained to listen for pass devices and search towards them. If communication is difficult because of your pass, you can turn it off while communicating only, and then don't forget to turn it back on. Make sure you always maintain radio contact with command and give them any information you remember. Point your flashlight at the ceiling and move it around from time to time so rescuers can see it. Even though this is probably the most difficult thing you've ever gone through, you must avoid panic. Think about these three things: breathe, organize, and act. First, slow down and slow your breathing down and reserve your air as much as possible. By controlling your respirations, you conserve air while your mind is focused on what you want it to do. Slowing your respirations will help you think more logically, and also remember how to use your buddy breather if need be. The next step is to organize your actions. You must have a plan or make a plan, organize your thoughts, and perform them in that order. The last step is to act. Once you have your plan, take action. Perform all of your steps skillfully and with no wasted effort or time. What can you do to bring attention to yourself during a Mayday? Use your tool to make tapping noises on the floor or wall, and let command know what you're doing, like, I'm tapping 3 times with my Halligan. And if you have an exterior wall nearby, use that because it helps to make the sounds louder, and you can also let command know that you're using that outside wall. Why should you never separate from your crew during a Mayday? If you're with a crew, stay together, don't ever separate. Your chances of survival greatly increase if you remain together and stay calm. If there's a hose line nearby, follow it out. Remember, the female coupling leads toward the pump or to the outside, and the male coupling leads toward the fire. If you're working off of a lifeline, use that. As the fire continues to burn light fixtures, computers, wiring, and HVAC ducting, the possibility of encountering entanglement hazard increases greatly. For this reason, you should always carry wire cutters with you. The big thing to remember is put them in a place where you're not going to forget where they're at. Don't bury them in the bottom of your pocket somewhere where you can't easily get to them. Continue searching for an exit. Don't ever give up. Search for a wall, then search for doors or windows that may help you. Don't give up on the inside of a sheetrock wall or brick veneer wall. Use the tool you have with you to breach your way out. There are several different types of upper floor escape techniques that can be learned, such as the window hang, the rapid ladder escape, the low profile ladder escape, and the hose slide escape. You can look these techniques up online. These upper floor escape techniques are extremely dangerous maneuvers and should be taught, demonstrated, and practiced in a controlled environment under competent supervision. The last thing I want to talk to you about is our new tactical worksheet that is available in the IDS under Forms. This is what it looks like. The reason why we developed this worksheet is not only because NFPA 1561 says we'll have one, but it's also going to help command track resources and assignments more efficiently. It'll also help us transfer information to the workboard as an incident escalates. Command technicians no longer have to keep track of information in their heads. They now have a way to keep up. It's also good for captains riding up and for backup command techs. You can carry these on engines and trucks, and depending on the situation, engine officers or truck officers assuming command prior to the arrival of the BC can use the worksheet to make and track assignments. This should make for an easy transition when passing command. As you can see at the top of the worksheet, we've got a place for the time and date, the address, the box number, and incident number. We also have a box for tracking resources and assignments. There's another box for time stamping benchmarks, and also on the time requested for secondary resources and the time they arrived. This worksheet should be used on all one alarm assignments, and remember, on the back there is a Mayday checklist. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and let me leave you with this. Firefighter survival skills are necessary due to the unpredictability of the fireground. The fireground is a hostile, ever-changing environment. As the fire progresses, you must make quick decisions based on only what you see from the outside prior to entering the structure. Once you're inside, your vision is limited due to the amount of smoke produced by burning synthetic furnishings and composite building materials. Your ability to feel heat is also compromised due to the insulative properties of your bunker gear. Fires will always be dangerous and unpredictable. Most of the time, you'll have limited information for decision making. The limited information you have when you're making decisions can contribute to the chances that you'll make an error. As firefighters, we must improve our ability to process the limited information available to make good decisions. Fires will always be unpredictable and they will always be dangerous. For this reason, we must always be prepared for a Mayday event. If you're a firefighter long enough, it will not be a matter of if a Mayday event will happen, but when a Mayday event arrives. You must be 100% ready 100% of the time.